Welcome to the Unique Boutique. I am your host, Matt Hodkinson. Now, this week's guest needs no introduction, literally, because I've just introduced myself. It's me. In a plot twist, I've decided that every now and then on the Unique Boutique, as we are now rebranded, I am going to ask myself a bunch of questions that have been submitted by you, the listeners. And in this inaugural session of this, I've been collecting a bunch of questions that I've faced from boutique consultancy leaders just like you in recent weeks and months. Now, this is unscripted. Whilst I've prepared the questions, what I haven't done is prepared any answers. I'm going in completely cold. You're going to get my legitimate and honest response as I face these questions straight off the top of my head so that you can be sure it's not just what the LLMs, what AI has pre-prepared for me. This is my own thinking, it's my own responding, and hopefully it's going to provide some valuable content for the next 30 or 40 minutes. So without further ado, let's get into it. First question was, what's the actual difference between positioning and marketing? I've spent money and time on both, and only one of them seems to be moving the needle, but I can't tell you which one. Okay. First off, a couple of questions baked into that because, yes, there's the difference between positioning and marketing, but also then how do you measure it? What should you be expecting? What are some of the commercial benefits of doing either positioning, marketing, or both? Okay, first off, I see positioning as a pre-marketing exercise. And this is based out of my own experience. Those of you who have read Mescapology, my book, where I tell the story of how I ran my own inbound marketing agency for 11 years. And it's during that time that I recognized that around about 50% of our clients were getting some fantastic results, and 50% really weren't getting anywhere near the same sort of results for themselves in their marketing efforts. And when I dove deeper into that, it became very obvious that the ones that were getting the results had doubled down on differentiation. They had a really clear proposition that was easy for them to articulate throughout the business, and that was being borne out through those marketing messages and marketing effort. They demonstrated a much deeper understanding of the buyer's needs. They had diagnosed what the challenges, frustrations, and problems that their ideal clients were facing day to day were before they really started working with them. They put up these walls and barriers to working with them unless they could provide them with legitimate solutions. They weren't yes men and women. They weren't just saying, yeah, we can help you with that, absolutely, without it actually being true to their capabilities and their value proposition. I was also feeling it myself. I was generically positioned in market as my inbound agency. So we'd gone B2B. And it's only when I focused in on a particular niche, in this case, B2B consultancies, that I really found my tribe. I found that I was able to understand and diagnose the challenges they were facing to a much greater degree through the conversations I have, collecting questions like this, collecting frustrations, collecting blockers and problems, and playing that back to my audience through my content. And that's how people really sort of resonated with it. So yeah, that was the difference. That's the kind of where it all came from, this idea that positioning was the thing to lean into, and that it should come before marketing. Here's the thing, and you may have heard me say this before if you've been around my content for some time, that I equate poor positioning to eating a bad diet. You know, if you want to get in shape, you're going to have to out-train that bad diet. You're going to have to spend more time in the gym, more time running the streets, more time lifting the weights. And that's what you're going to have to do with your marketing. So when I talk about positioning, marketing, poor positioning, you need to do a hell of a lot more marketing, spend more on it, engage agencies to help you out, really double down on content to outpace that poor positioning, that poor understanding of your market, that poor ability to articulate, I should say, the problems, the challenges that clientele are really facing. But the counterpoint, when you get your positioning right, when you can state with clarity what your value proposition is, when you can play back that understanding of their situation so that they recognize themselves in your proposition, all those ideal clients, then you won't have to do half as much marketing. It won't cost you as much. It'll be much more effective, more with less. So I hope that's kind of explains the difference between positioning and marketing, their relative position to each other. I mean, positioning really is that. It's a deep understanding of your clientele and the problems and challenges that they face, also their goals and ambitions that they're aiming to realize as well. And then marketing comes in and promotes that to that audience. It's the visible layer of that messaging, that promotion, so that people understand that you get them and their situation and that you can provide them with a viable solution as well. Now, to the commercial point, what's moving the needle, you can't tell what's working and what's not. The expectation should absolutely be that when you get positioning right, it moves those commercial needles. And the kinds of things you should be looking for are shorter sales cycles, less of that heel dragging when it comes to decision time and getting the sign on the dotted line. You should also be looking at maybe moving your pricing a little bit higher. That elasticity of pricing will be higher. The ceiling will raise because you've positioned yourself for those clients that you can best serve. And then it doesn't become a price-based decision. Also, if you've really leaned into differentiation, there's no point of comparison. So when you do use that tired old language, referring to yourselves as just another digital transformation consultancy, we're another people strategy consultancy, then you leave the ability for your clients to say, oh, you're a bit like so-and-so. And with all of that comes experience, expectation around the experience, around the people, around the frameworks that you'll be using, the methodologies, but also the pricing. And when that expectation comes to you and you say, well, actually, we're premium priced, that's where resistance comes from. So when you remove that comparison, you use new category language, you use that differentiation, true differentiation, that removes that ability for those comparisons to happen. So you can provide a different experience, different frameworks, your own proprietary methodology, and crucially, raise those prices as well. So shorter sales cycles, higher value deals as well, with lower resistance, that's really the key. Plenty of different commercial opportunities. When you're attracting the right clients, the longevity of those relationships extends as well. So the lifetime value of clients is higher too. So plenty of commercial needles to move. If those needles are moving in the right direction, then typically it's a combination of your positioning and your marketing. But marketing alone won't get you there. And to a certain extent, positioning alone won't get you there either. Because once you've established that position, you need to tell the world. You need to achieve that reach and those impressions and that awareness that's going to get you there as well. Okay, that was one question. It's going to take us a while at this rate. Okay, second question. We've done a rebrand twice. New logo, new website, sharper words. Nothing changed commercially. What did we miss? Okay, could be a number of things. Again, I'm diagnosing off the top of my head, but the reality is that first off, it's important to understand that a new logo, a new website, those kind of design features, that's a rebrand, and that's different from positioning. Positioning is that very deep understanding of your buyers and being able to play forward your value proposition in a way that compels and differentiates you, as I've just said. So it could be, what did you miss? It could be that you missed that understanding piece, really diving into the situational niche, as I call it. Much more powerful than niching by sector, by vertical. Niche by problem, niche by challenge. That's how people can recognize themselves in your proposition. So it might be that understanding wasn't there. It might be that you just went all in on design and tried to kind of, again, outpace your value proposition. So you're more interested in the aesthetic than really getting across with great clarity and curiosity building as well. You know, really leaving some meat on the bone when telling people what you do, so that they have to lean in and say, "Oh, tell me more. I need to find out more." The job with your positioning should be to really open loops in the buyer's brain so that they have to get into a conversation with you. And the vast majority of you consultancy leaders that I speak with day to day, fantastic at selling. Now, when you're in the right conversation, it's just that you need to be in more of those conversations. The other thing about working on your website, doing that rebrand side of things, it's perhaps looking in the wrong direction. And that could be something that you've missed, is just recognizing that actually most consultancy websites are nothing more than a hygiene factor, a hygiene check for your clients. They'll find out about you typically elsewhere. They're not finding you via Google. They're probably not finding you via the LLMs, the AI engines out there. If they are, fantastic, well done. But the reality is that they're still going to need all of those trust factors. They're going to need that social proof to convince them logically that you are a viable option for them. So typically they're, of course, coming from referrals. They're coming from your own network and your extended network, people that are sort of lurking, looking in on your content. If you're big on LinkedIn, then you'll start to see some of your second and third line contacts coming in and commenting and liking your stuff. And if they fit the bill, chances are that at some point they're going to check you out to a bigger degree, perhaps book a call with you. So if we recognize that those introductions are typically coming from those traditional sources, referrals, network, and that side of things, and that your website is a hygiene check, then really don't expect it to do all the heavy lifting of your new business. Don't get me wrong, great to present yourself well, great to be consistent when it comes to your branding too. And it can go a long way to convince some people at least that you are a viable, a professional outfit that's credible, that's worth some attention. But don't hold too much stock in the ability for your website, however flash it is, to do the heavy lifting. That's where your positioning can really come into its own. Okay, question number 3. Everyone in our space claims to be different or specialist. What does genuine differentiation actually look like when you see it? Great question. And yes, I've talked about differentiation already. It is very, very important to stand out from the crowd. Shall I say it, that old cliche that it's a noisy place out there. It's difficult to be heard above the noise, but that is the reality. You only have to spend 5-10 minutes on LinkedIn to see just how much content is being produced minute by minute. And it's not just LinkedIn, of course, it's not just competitors that you're competing with when it comes to attention. It's the radio ads, the TV, it's what's going on in the news, it's what Trump is doing tomorrow. You know, it's all of that stuff is just impacting on people's attention. It's just calling out for them to notice me. And for you to break through that noise is going to take something different. We notice what's different. I tell this story of how I was on the tube train in London a few months ago, and it was in winter. So a lot of big coats, and typically, as is the case, especially in London for some reason, not much differentiation when it comes to coats. They're all sort of black, dark grey, dark blue, all very samey, just a sea of dull monotone. And over in the corner, I noticed because, of course, the time of day as well. I think we're talking about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I thought, this guy can't be coming out of a nightclub. He's not going to a nightclub just yet either. And yet he was wearing this jacket that was entirely made of what looked like crow's feathers. Just incredible, this thing, just like puffed out, all these feathers everywhere. And he got my attention because he stood out from the crowd. Now, if everybody else had been wearing the crow feather jackets, he wouldn't have stood out. I might not have noticed him. My attention might have gone to one of the others. But the reality is, what stands out gets our attention. That goes, yes, to an extent to visuals. So, to kind of counter-argue myself on that last point about design, design can help you to stand out if you've got a colourful brand. But the reality is the words will go much further in conveying to people just how different you are. In answer to the question, everyone in our space claims to be different. What does real differentiation look like? Let me start by telling you what it's not like. It's not the baseline expectations of your clients. And what I mean by that is, when I ask boutique consulting leaders what makes them different, I get one of a handful of the same sorts of answers. They just keep repeating, which in itself means they're not differentiated. But it's things like, we really care about our clients. We've been doing this for 40 years. We've walked in the shoes of our clients. We used to work in the sector. That's where we came from as an industry, so we understand where our clients are coming from. That's pretty much everyone in consulting. So many consultancies were born out of a capability that used to exist in one consultancy or one business that exited and then went back to that sector to claim its first clients and its first projects and pieces of work. And so you walking in the shoes, you really caring about your clients, all of that stuff, whatever can be claimed by anyone else in the consulting sector, that's not a differentiator. And a lot of it, as I say, is just baseline expectation of your clients. So you've got all that experience. Great. That's why people are coming to you. right? It's not a differentiator. It's a baseline expectation. It is the floor level. So that's something to ask yourself when you are looking for differentiators. I mean, you can differentiate on many things, like your proprietary mechanism for delivery. So what is the process that you take clients through? We worked with one client in the project management space who decided that Prince 2, Waterfall, and even Agile had frailties that they didn't agree with, so they couldn't fully buy into them. They created their entire own proprietary project management system and methodology that they worked with their clients on, that fitted the bill of what they saw to be the best way, that removed all the friction and filled some of the gaps that existed with those other methodologies. So methodology is one thing. You can differentiate on the results that you generated. I mean, you generated results for your clients before. Sing about it, not in case studies, but tell that as the results that you generate for your clients. Make it your commercial promise. Build it into your language. What are the needles that you're moving for your clients? Speak about that. I don't see it often enough when it comes to the consultancy clients that I work with. And yet another opportunity, perhaps the biggest one, is that category language itself. How do you describe yourselves? Use different language because, again, novelty will get the attention. People will buy into it because it's different. First, you'll get the attention, then you can ratify it with logic. You can explain it in further detail. You can tell people why you're attention worthy. But first off, you've got to get the attention in the first place. And again, if you use that category language that everybody else in your sector would use to describe themselves, very difficult for you to stand out. So be the crow's feather jacket. Don't be the black duffel or whatever it might be. So that's a little bit on differentiation, and the question was, claims to be different or specialist. Again, specialist is a baseline expectation. That's what people are buying into. By all means, be a specialist, but you have to be different to earn the attention that you deserve. That's how you're going to get into more conversations with great fit clients. Okay. So leading on from that, actually, this question really leans into that in a bigger way. When you talk about owning a category, do you mean a sector, a service line, or something else? I get lost in the language. That's fair. Okay, that can be difficult to understand. So let me dive into that deeper. For anyone that was following along on that last answer and thought, what do you mean by this category language piece? Let me dive into that a bit deeper. So I gave a couple of examples earlier. Things like a digital transformation consultancy, people strategy consultancy, or HR consultancy. Just generic, I still see people calling themselves management consultancies. There's productivity consultancies, there's sustainability and ESG. So there are all these different flavors, and yet within each of those flavors or categories, there can be thousands of occupants. The number of digital transformation consultancies that I know of, is a really, really big number. Without really then starting to look at, well, what niches are you working in? And the question was around, do you mean a sector, a service line, or something else? Here's something really, really important to understand. To position yourself around a capability or service line is not the way to go. Because again, lots of others have those capabilities and service lines within their offering. That's not what's going to help you stand out. But also, for the most part, the vast majority of your would-be clients are not solution aware. So again, they're not using Google to search for digital transformation consultancy and then to find you and then all of a sudden think, well, this is the answer. I'm just going to talk to these people and they're going to fix it for me. I wish that's, how it happened, because that would be quite easy for you to generate tons and tons of new business from, but it's not the case. Typically, the buyer journey starts elsewhere. Again, the vast majority of your business is going to come from word of mouth. It's going to come from recommendation and referral. Talk about your own social proof, because that's going to help for those that do find you cold. But there's only around, if we believe those people who sell the intent data and look into all the B2B stats further, there's about 3% of your addressable market at any one time are at the consideration stage and would therefore be solution aware. They'd probably be aware of that type of language. But again, here's the other thing. If they are on the hunt for a particular category, then typically that's already a competitive situation that you're walking into. They'll see you as equals with many, many others, and they're going to want to keep their options open. They may be going for the one who's most budget friendly. They should be going for the ones who are most capable, who deliver the greatest results, talk about the impact that they generate. And that's my point. To position around the impact and the results, more so than the capability and the service line, is where the wins lie. Let me repeat that. Talk about the outcomes and the impact that you create for your clients rather than the service line and the capabilities that your people have. Because that is, again, a differentiator. It's unique. Those results are going to be unique to you. No one moved the needle to that degree that you did. And if you can cite a quantifiable result, so for example, if you were in a productivity consultancy and you stated that you could cut costs by 46 man hours within the next 14 days, then that's something quantifiable, especially if those numbers are not on the tens and fives. The 46 is quite, intriguing. It's like, 46, that sounds like a real result, rather than you just saying 50%, for example, which people will be saying, it just sounds like you've plucked that out of the air. So positioning around impact, around results, that can be owning a category. But the category language itself has to do a few things. First off, it has to out your ideal clients. It has to tell them the who. Who is this for? Who should be recognizing themselves in our proposition? The more you can get that across, and that can be to talk about the pains, the challenges, the frustrations that they're facing, then that's a really, really good thing. And then you can allude to the results that you generate as well in your positioning. And that's where that category language comes from. It should never be about capabilities. It should never be about service lines. When people get into the conversation with you, by all means say, these are the mechanisms, these are the skill sets that we bring to bear. But if you start with impact, if you start with those challenges and frustrations that you're helping to solve, then that's where people can really recognize themselves, because that's what they're going through day to day. They're experiencing that frustration. Walk in the shoes of your ideal clients for a day. Go through their working day, from arriving at the office, sitting down at their desk, chatting to a colleague at the water cooler. What terminology are they using? What are they griping about? What are their complaints? What are their frustrations? What do they wish for in the future? What are the fixes that they're looking for? What are they tapping into Google and the LLMs to try and move their situation forward? And then play that back as your category language. You will do ultimately so much more positive work for your brand by demonstrating that understanding and letting people buy into you. So that's what I mean by owning a category, is really to own that situational niche. And then you can start presenting your solutions, but just safe in the knowledge that capabilities, solution language, that's not how to position yourself. Right, let's continue with the next question. My 3 partners would each describe what we do in 3 different ways. Where do I even start with internal alignment before I worry about the outside world? This is brilliant. So this question really tells the story of what positioning is to an extent. If you think about the iceberg, of course, we only see the tip. We see the 10% and the 90% is below the waterline. That's what positioning really is. I mean, the 10% at the top that everybody sees externally is the result of all that alignment that's gone before it. The vast majority of the positioning work that I do with clients is aligning those internal teams before we even think about that presentation layer, about activating that position in market so that everybody can see it. And one of the big pains is just this, that there isn't a consistent and repeatable understanding of what you do as a consultancy. Raise your hands. I'm not going to see it, of course. Raise your hands if that's you. So getting everybody singing from the same hymn sheet is absolutely step one. How do you do it? Well, first off, you really have to do some proposition work, in my experience, typically. It starts again with doing that persona exercise so that you all understand to the same degree the challenges, the frustrations, the pains, but also the goals and the ambitions of those buyers. You'd also do well to take a look at the competitive situation as well. So look at competitors, both direct and indirect, anybody that could be perceived by your clients as offering a solution to their challenges and their woes. and really look at how they're describing themselves. What is the baseline language? What's the white noise that they're creating around their proposition? So that then you can know what you've got to differentiate yourself from. What noise have you got to elevate your proposition above in order to get the attention that you deserve? And lastly, look at the market dynamics as well. Look at what direction your target audience are moving in terms of their sector, in terms of their organizational profile. Are they in an upwards market? Are they in a declining market? Are they pretty static? That can have an impact on, well, first off, the results that you can generate and the amount of business you can really truly attract, but also on the kind of language and the kinds of message that you put into market to attract that attention. Do you use more away from language when it's a declining market, so you can recognize their pains and the seeming precipice that they're on and give them hope? Or do you use that towards language that starts with hope and then just ratifies that perhaps they need to protect themselves against any future drop-offs that there might be as well? All important stuff to understand before then taking a look at that value proposition. I run this exercise called, this workshop called Proposition Mastery. And we look at, well, first off, we list and brainstorm all the propositions within a consultancy. I'd say the average is around about 5 or 6 different propositions. And then for each of those, we look at the target audience, we look at the kinds of output and outcomes and impacts that can be created for those clients. What is it that they really want? What are the outcomes they're looking for? And then we look at a number of different metrics to ascertain whether each of those propositions belongs in your arsenal of service lines and capabilities. So we look at things like profitability. We look at market fit and market demand, 2 separate things. We look at capabilities fit. Do you have the people to deliver to the greatest degree on the needs of the buyer for that particular challenge? And we look at the enjoyment factor as well. The deliverability factor, the productization potential of each of those propositions. And we give each of these a score to work out just what is the core set of propositions that really should be in market. And this is a recognition that sometimes you've bolted on propositions along the way that didn't belong. You said yes to that bit of work and it became a service line all of a sudden. You recruited somebody with those particular skills and now you've got to feed them. So it becomes a bit of a Frankenstein's monster of a value proposition over the years that you can always dial back. And that's what this exercise is about, really condensing it down. And then with that real foundational understanding across the team, then you can start to build on that positioning and ultimately the presentation and messaging layer to that position that you've assessed in market. But listen, I speak with consultancies every day that are facing these challenges. And to have that misalignment internally on what you're saying, you're not alone. It is such a common thing and it is easily fixed. It starts with that understanding, market, proposition, and then be ultimately sound on what it is you are telling the world. There's a process to it. I'll go into this deeper perhaps on a future episode where I talk about the positioning pyramid, and that's where I build these layers one on top of the other until you've ultimately achieved category ownership. And for anybody who's looking to go through that, just book a call with me. Just find me on LinkedIn. There's the option to book a positioning primer and I'll walk you through that with no obligation to buy anything from me. And I'm happy to just show you how to do that. Okay, on to the next one. If we take a sharper position, won't we put off prospects we currently win? It feels like narrowing on purpose. That's an interesting one, and I think it's indicative of this lie that we've been told about what niching is. Many gurus over the years have told us that to niche is to choose a business vertical or an industry that we have to solely serve at the expense of anybody else. And look, I understand why it's there. It's fixing the problem of prospects not knowing whether they are a potential customer of us. We have to make it obvious, as I say, about who we serve so that people can recognize themselves in our messaging and proposition and say, this is for me. This is worthy of my attention. I'm going to go forward with this. I'm going to give it my undivided. And that's one way of doing it. We can call people out. We can say, we help people in the healthcare sector. We can go further. We help procurement teams within the healthcare sector, or go to role level. We help chief procurement officers within the healthcare sector. You might even go down to a niche within the healthcare sector. We help chief procurement officers in oncology departments, for example. There's all sorts of ways of making it very obvious who we're calling out. But as I say, much more powerful than that is to use that situational niche. And this, I would argue, is where you can go sharper on your positioning, sharper on your targeting, without putting prospects off. Because the reality is that you have a bunch of capabilities that solve a particular subset of challenges and problems. You're not solving everything for every client. You're solving the challenges and the problems that you and your capabilities can provide solutions to. So, why don't we niche around those challenges, those problems, and those frustrations, rather than saying, we've got a bunch of capabilities, do you have anything that this can fix? Because people quite often don't diagnose themselves. They just know that they've got all of these things that are frustrating them from day to day. They've got those people problems happening over here. They've got these legacy IT systems that are slowing them down. They can't be as productive as they thought they could be. They've got concerns about their supply chain, that they're not sustainable in their practices, that perhaps they haven't got some anti-slavery policies in place. There's all of these challenges, these problems and these fears that are preying on your buyers. And if we play those back to our clients, if that's part of our positioning, part of our niching, then that's when people can really say, oh my God, that's me. That's what I've got. Now, yes, you could say Chief Procurement Officer and somebody's going to say, that's my job title. Yeah, that's great. Apart from the fact that there are 1,000 different job titles for the same role seemingly nowadays. So it's not going to hit on every base. But if you can really dig into that, and I tell my clients, really aim for that level of understanding that makes any prospects think that you have bugged their office. You've listened in on their conversations and you're playing back all of those complaints to them in a way that makes them feel, oh, God, it's like you were just listening to what I just said to that colleague. That's when they feel understood. That's where true resonance comes from. And that's where the attention that they've got for you then is locked in. They're like, okay, these guys understand. Sounds like they've got a solution to this. I need to pay attention. Let's go. And whether that's reading your blog post, watching your video, reading your email, or booking a call so they can find out more with you, they're going to be much more bought in based on that situational niche that is locked in and that they bought into and that you demonstrated you truly understand. So, yes, you take a sharper position, you will put some prospects off, but only the ones that aren't experiencing the challenges that you can truly help to solve. And listen, to sell a solution to somebody that isn't experiencing the challenges that you can help to solve, well, that's negligence. That's just wrong. It's fraud. So we're not going to do that anyway. So let's describe that situational niche. Let's play back those challenges to our ideal prospects, and then let's show them a way forward once we've got their undivided attention. Okay, right. Let's carry on. Is there a way to test whether new positioning is actually working before we commit to it publicly? I don't want to bet the firm on a hunch. Now, that's fair enough. Okay. Yes. The answer is yes. In fact, you can test your positioning before you go through an entire positioning exercise, put a load of money, effort, and time into what should be a very deep work sort of exercise that deserves everybody being involved within your organization and isn't just a tick box exercise. It really does deserve some attention and is not a quick fix. So before you go through that, yes, you do well to just test what messages and what positioning is going to land in market. Now, I keep talking about this situational niche. Understand your market like you've bugged their office. Well, how do we do that? So, well, here's the first thing you can do. And this is a great test for your positioning, because this is how you understand and how you get to know what challenges you're going to need to position around. So you go out to your first line network on LinkedIn, making the assumption here that you've spent a bit of time connecting with legitimate prospects on LinkedIn. If you haven't, I'd recommend that you do that first. That's very easy. You just use the advanced search. If you've got Sales Navigator, it becomes an invaluable tool for finding your prospects. Again, you're going to have to go based on their demographic, firmographic information. What type of organization, what size of organization, what role are they in? Because you got a hunch that they have got the challenges, the frustrations that you can solve. So you've done some work before with a certain role, with a certain profile of decision maker. Go out to them once they're in your first line network on LinkedIn and simply ask the question, I'm writing an article and I'd like to better understand what kind of challenges and problems and frustrations you're facing in your business right now. What would you say is your top challenge? And so first off, you're phrasing it as, I'm writing an article. And you can follow through and actually do this because it's going to be great content for you. But just phrase it that way. I'm just researching an article. I'd like to understand what challenges you're facing in your role. What would you say is number one? Now, not everybody's going to respond. Very, very easy to get ghosted. But if you send out enough of these, a few people are going to reply and they're going to give you an answer. Everything from a 3-worder to a 2 or 3 paragraphs. All of it really, really valuable. And if you do that often enough, and I would posit that you need to be doing this on an ongoing basis, that you're always showing that you've got your finger on the pulse of the market. And people will respond, and you'll notice themes and recurring trends, recurring problems, and those are the ones that you really need to lean into. Then you can start to understand, well, first off, there's going to be some demand for what we're offering. It's still there. People are still experiencing these challenges. Maybe they'll reframe it for you. Maybe they'll give you a new lens on the challenges that you thought you were helping to solve. And it's phrased a slightly different way. It's nuanced. There'll be something that is unearthed there that you really hadn't realized before. So it's going to be really valuable. So that's the first thing. Always have that, always be polling, sort of finger on the pulse dynamic going on. Messages always going out to first line who look like your prospects, legitimate prospects, because that's how we ensure accuracy, and just capture all that data, collect problems. That's how you'll get that understanding. And then here's another technique to test the positioning. So when you've then got an understanding, this is how we need to position ourselves around these challenges and problems. Craft a few different messages, a few different hooks, come at it from different angles. So there might be, in one instance, there'll be a commercial angle to come from. In another, there'll be a logistical angle to come from. In yet another, there'll be an environmental or a political issue that you want to bring to bear. You can have away from language, as I say, moving away from pain. And you can have some towards language, which is all very positive and moving them towards a solution. And then inevitably, there are some sort of left field, quite quirky and controversial messages that you can put out as well. What you will have once you bring all of those messages together is a hypothesis, a bunch of different messages that you can test in market. And you can run a very inexpensive pay-per-click campaign that puts out just some static ads with these messages on them to see which get the response. And all you really need is to have that message on an ad with a call to action. And on the button, it might say something like book a call. It might say register for a webinar. It's that old lean startup methodology. There isn't a webinar. There isn't at this stage perhaps a call even to book. But it's the intent of clicking that button that you want to capture. It's that action that they're taking. Make them do something. It doesn't have to be to register. It doesn't have to be to book a call. Maybe it's to read an article. Maybe it's to watch a video. And when they click through, you're very honest. You're very forthright. You just tell them, actually, we're just capturing some data at this point, but we will be bringing some content to bear. Thanks for clicking. Thanks for participating. Perhaps send them to some resources that might help them, just so that they're not ultimately massively disappointed and feeling a bit duped at this stage. But the reality is what you're looking for is an indication. You're looking for a response that's going to tell you that this message over here that's getting a 6% click-through rate is much more prevalent and likely to hit market than this one that's getting a 0.1% click-through rate. And you will see that there'll be 2 or 3 messages that are rising to the top, and you can center your entire positioning around that, knowing full well, especially based on your targeting, as long as that has been accurate to your ICP, your ideal client profile, then you'll know that you'll get a response, because that's the kind of message that is resonating in market for you. So those are a couple of ways in which you can test your positioning before you go all in and start to incur lots of costs and that time sink that can be a real in-depth positioning exercise. First off, finger on the pulse, and then run that messaging test using pay-per-click. When it comes to the budget, if you've got anywhere between £100 to £500 to spend, to save a fortune on marketing later, by the way, so you will get a return on that exercise. It'll be one of the most valuable things you can do. That's how I would go about testing your positioning before going to market. Right. I think we're just about there on time. I hope you enjoyed my little inaugural Ask Me Anything. Listen, if you want your question addressed by me on a future episode, then send them through to me. Find me on LinkedIn. My email address is out there somewhere as well. Comment on this wherever you see it, whether it's the episode on YouTube, whether it's on our podcast platforms. Just get me hook or by crook. Send your messages in. I'll read them out on a future episode and get them answered. And we'll be back to some of our expert interviews very, very soon. I'll see you on the next episode of The Unique Boutique. Bye for now.